You need to find something fast. So you go to Google and do a quick search. You get what you want, then you leave without another thought. But there's a dark and disturbing force behind that seemingly innocent search. The force that gave you the answer has the power to create millionaires in weeks, ruin lives overnight, and even collapse entire industries, all with the push of a button. You'll discover behind that simple search box the countless victims, the power and greed, and perhaps worst of all, that this was the evil plan all along. This is the story of how Google has weaponized its algorithm to steal the very soul of the internet. The internet that was built by humans, the stay-at-home mom, the doctor, the small-town dreamer. We are the internet's fuel, and only we can stop the bleak future that's coming. To really understand what's going on, we have to go back in time. The late 90s. Slow dial-up connections, Napster, ICQ, LimeWire, Newgrounds, and the blue screen of death, pop-up ads, and primitive search engines with bad results. It was exciting and beautiful, but it was also messy and chaotic. And that's when two heroes appeared. Grad students Larry Page and Sergey Brin. They created a new algorithm called Backrub, which was used to launch Google. Google wasn't just another search engine though. It was refreshingly simple. Just a search box and two buttons. You type in your search, a list of 10 blue links pop up, and you click the best one. Finally, the early, disconnected, and unorganized world of websites had a way that people could actually find them. But Google had something else too. They were a fun company that wore their straightforward slogan on their sleeve: "Don't be evil." They also appeared to be genuinely selfless, stating a line that you'll want to remember. Quote, "We may be the only people in the world who can say our goal is to have people leave our website as quickly as possible." End quote. Google was truly at the core of the open web. The web that was now supercharged as experts and everyday people rushed to bring their offline knowledge and views and entertainment to the internet. This clear roadway to nearly infinite knowledge was changing the world forever, all in large part thanks to Google. But as history has shown, every revolution invites those who seek to control it. The power of ranking number one in Google for some phrases was quite literally like striking gold. One of the earliest examples I can remember was Jeremy Shoemaker holding up an AdSense check for $132,994.97. Fascinating stories of people getting rich on the internet in weird ways gave rise to an entire new industry: search engine optimization, or SEO. Simply put, you could hire an expert to make changes to your website that Google's algorithm might favor. What started as common sense improvements that were genuinely helpful was quickly overshadowed by human greed and a lust for quick results. People quickly figured out ways to game Google's algorithm, anything to rank number one and cash in. It worked. Fortunes were made overnight. There are people living in mansions right now as you watch this video that made all their money this way. But it created a major crisis for Google at the time. If they didn't do something to slow down this trend, search results would become even more littered with manipulation, and people would stop trusting Google. This human greed set the stage for the first battle between creators and Google. In a way, Google's hand was forced, but during my research for this video, I found something that tells a very different story. In an interview in the year 2004, co-founder of Google Larry Page was asked, "Where do you go from here? What do you see yourself doing in 10 or 20 years?" Here's his reply.
Artificial intelligence would be the ultimate version of Google. So if we had the ultimate search engine, it would understand everything on the web. It would understand exactly what you wanted, and it would give you the right thing. And that's obviously artificial intelligence. It would be able to answer any question basically, because almost everything is on the web, right? And so we're nowhere near doing that now. However, we can get incrementally closer to that, and that's basically what we work on.
This directly contradicts everything Google had stated before. Was your goal really to send people away from your site as quickly as possible? Or was it to ingest as much data as possible to create a super intelligent AI? Either way, he doesn't sound like a champion of the open web. He sounds like he wanted to become the web. Google continued tweaking its algorithm to make it increasingly difficult to rank high with shady tactics, but at this point, the internet still had a glaring problem. There were billions of daily searches that had no answer, because it simply didn't exist. This gave rise to a new breed of digital publishers, content farms. The goal of a content farm was to create as many sites as possible that answered the billions of questions that had no answer. After all, it was easy to rank number one in Google if you had no competition. But most of these pages were kinda useless, yet millions of people clicked. These content farms had taken advantage of the gap between Google and available content. They had to do something. Within a 2-year period, Google released 2 updates, adorably nicknamed Panda and Penguin. They were updates to the algorithm that specifically targeted low-quality content, and it worked. Nearly overnight, they decimated content farms. Thousands of content mills vanished overnight. Google had won. It felt like a victory for the internet, but looking back, I believe this was the moment everything changed. Because Google had learned something important. If they controlled the flow of information, if they decided which sites lived and which ones died, they could do more than just clean up the web. They could control it. And that's when the shift began, from a noble mantra of, we send you away as quickly as possible, to maybe you should stay right here on Google. Google had always been the gateway to the internet, but now it was becoming the destination. It started with something called zero-click searches. Basically, instead of sending you to a website, Google would just give you the answer right there on the search results page. For users, it was great. The weather instantly displayed, a definition of a word right there. If you need a calculator, no need to click to another website. And honestly, nobody was really crying for the Weather Channel or Webster's Dictionary. So then, like an addict who wants just a little bit more, Google escalated. They introduced something called the knowledge graph. Basically, a database of facts pulled from millions of other sites that it could display directly in the search results as if it were their own. Instead of needing to click on a link to an external site, Google would just put the answer directly at the top with a modest link to the source. The problem was, why would anyone click the link if they got the answer right away? Effectively, Google had stolen content and ad impressions directly from websites. Users loved it. If you're Googling something, you just want the answer. You don't really care how. But every time you got your quick answer, a corporation got richer and a small business died a little more. It's no wonder that over time, people stopped saying, I found it on so-and-so website, and they started saying, I found it on Google. Google wasn't just the map anymore, it was becoming the territory. Larry Page's prophecy, his vision of a world where Google became an omnipresent AI, delivering answers instantly without sending you anywhere, was becoming reality. The seeds of a new era were planted, an era where Google quietly repackaged the internet for itself, stripping away the traffic, the revenue, and the very lifeblood of the websites that built it. But honestly, we hadn't seen anything yet. The internet had actually undergone a painful but necessary cleansing, and the result was a world where everyone could thrive. If you provided real authentic value, you could still get substantial traffic from Google. Finally, it was the internet we dreamed of. For the first time in a long time, everyone was winning. Google had a higher quality web to work with, users got better, more trustworthy answers, and independent creators had to be genuinely helpful. But perhaps we got too comfortable believing Google's traffic would last forever, something no business or creator can ever afford to do. Because as these creators built their futures funded by Google traffic, Google was quietly preparing for something else. It had accumulated unimaginable data, unprecedented power, and soon, the very people who helped build the web could be left with nothing, because the next bomb was about to drop. In November 2022, an unknown threat emerged. I'm referring to ChatGPT, a large language model capable of generating human-like text on demand, drawing from everything it had ever stolen. I mean read. It quickly became the fastest growing consumer application in history. A new way to get information had arrived, one that didn't rely on Google search at all. Google panicked and they declared a code red. But it turned out that Google had similar technology all along. They just had little reason to actually release it. They were sitting on a $30 billion a year dominant search engine, and disrupting the delicate balance they had perfected over 20 years just didn't make sense. But suddenly, ChatGPT had forced their hand and an AI arms race had begun. The generative AI explosion was here. Google launched Bard, which became Gemini. They started integrating it into some search result pages, oftentimes completely copying the content of the website below it. For Google, it was actually perfect. This was Larry Page's prophecy fully realized. AI was the final stage, the ultimate version of Google. A system that never needed to send you anywhere. But where would this put website owners? The entire industry was on edge as they witnessed Google finding a way to shift even more traffic away from sites and to themselves. It felt like doomsday. And shortly after, for many, it was. Shortly after AI's rise, Google unleashed a new algorithm update. It was called the Helpful Content Update, or HCU. Google claimed it would, quote, better reward content where visitors feel they've had a satisfying experience. Most sites performing well at this point deserve to do well. Real people were behind them, spending countless hours perfecting their content. But in reality, HCU was pretty vague, and I believe that was on purpose. It would allow them to do whatever they wanted under the guise of helping users. The result was websites seeing their traffic get obliterated. 50, 60, 70, even 90% of traffic gone overnight. Forums and groups exploded. People were devastated. People who had built legitimate, thriving businesses based on Google's own past guidance were suddenly deemed unworthy. A harsh truth was showing its face again. Google doesn't owe traffic to anyone. But here's the question. Why would Google really do it? It wasn't bad content getting punished. It was high quality content, in-depth, well-researched. It was content that followed the guidelines Google themselves publicly shared. And yet they were getting replaced by big brand names, major media conglomerates like Forbes, sources people trust, but with content clearly created just to rank in Google. Honestly, it felt like we went back to the content farm era. But if Google wanted to be the ultimate hub of the internet, it had to consolidate it. It had to eradicate independent sites and destroy the entire ecosystem. The soul of the internet could no longer exist. It needed to control the number of sites that mattered. And it did so under the perfect disguise, a helpful content update. But there was one site that stood out above the rest, one that would give us an even deeper glimpse into the plans of Google. Reddit. I'd argue it deserved to rank number one, but there's a darker truth at play. For years, one unshakable truth gave independent creators a small sense of security. If Google kills off all their websites, who's going to create new content for it to scrape? If there's no money in it, people stop creating. And if people stop creating, Google has nothing to feed its AI. But Google knew it already bled independent website owners dry, and it needed another source, a dynamic, always growing, high quality source. That's where Reddit came in. Millions of real people talking about everything under the sun, and Google wanted it all. Reports indicate that Google is paying Reddit $60 million for the rights to train its AI on Reddit's data. And by data, I mean human beings. Real people, unpaid, sharing their knowledge for free. It's a brilliant deal for Google and Reddit. Google gets billions of real-time conversations to scrape, making its AI smarter, faster, better. Reddit, now a public company, gets a massive injection of revenue and more search traffic. More search traffic equals more users, equals more posts, equals more free data for Google to extract. It's a perfect partnership, but only for now. Because if history tells us anything, Reddit should be terrified. Google has always sucked the life out of its hosts, and when the well runs dry, it moves on. Right now, Google is feeding off Reddit, but soon it won't need Reddit anymore. Google's mission is simple: keep users on Google. Why would Reddit be treated any differently than the victims before it? It's a short-term boost wrapped in a long-term death sentence. A devil's bargain. And the clock? It's already ticking. Google isn't just another tech company. When you're worth more than $2 trillion, you can't just stop. Your shareholders demand more. Wall Street demands more. But how can Google keep growing year after year when it already controls the gateway to nearly all information? The answer is disturbingly simple. Consume everything. Every blog, every recipe, every news article, every video. Absorb it, ingest it, own it, and then deliver it directly for your own benefit. Google is becoming the internet itself. But there's a dark consequence to this infinite hunger, because the more Google takes, the less room there is for humans. We're left with a sanitized internet, a place carefully curated by algorithms, corporations, and AI. But before we blame Google alone, let's ask ourselves an uncomfortable question. Did we let this happen? Little by little, we've handed over control. We've allowed our attention spans to shrink, our curiosity to dull, our standards to erode. We chase fleeting dopamine hits while something deeper, something human is slipping away. And now, AI stands ready to deliver the final blow. Not just some dystopian, distant threat. This is happening now. AI-generated content, engineered with surgical precision to feed our every impulse, to keep us glued and numb. It tells us what we want to hear, never what we need to hear. It satisfies our cravings but starves our minds. If we continue down this path, the future is pretty bleak. Not even necessarily because AI is taking over, but because we're willingly giving it everything that once made us human. Google's original motto was simple: don't be evil. But somewhere along the way, that message disappeared, and it seemed to be replaced by power and endless expansion. They've systematically ingested the work of millions, human beings who built the internet one web page at a time. Today, that internet is fading. Not because it had to, but because Google has chosen dominance over humanity. This video you're watching right now, it's being ingested too. Every word, every image, every thought. Google will use it to fuel the next wave of AI, until videos like this no longer need to exist. Google is spending $50 billion on AI in 2025 alone, in my opinion, for one reason: to fully realize Larry Page's vision, a world where Google is everything. But here's the thing. Humans need humans. We crave authenticity, connection, and genuine human experiences, and that gives us hope. Because while Google may hold immense power, it doesn't control our choices. So next time you search, don't just stop at Google's answer. Click through to that independent blog and support creators directly. Send them a thank you email, bookmark their website, tell your friends. Let's show Google and let's remind ourselves that humans aren't obsolete. We built the internet, and if we choose,